Do you really need to hire an agent to buy or sell a house? Well, what I'm about to tell you, I don't think you're going to hear from any other realtor, and that is that the answer is no. But you probably should. Imagine representing yourself in a courtroom without a lawyer. Even if you know the facts and your side of the story, there's a chance you could win, but you'd also be taking a huge risk. Buying or selling a home is kind of the same. Technically, you can do it alone, but today I'll show you why having a real estate agent is not just a convenience or added expense, but how it's the difference between all of the stress, time loss, heartache, and possibly a huge financial hardship, and just getting on with your life and your next move smoothly. We'll also look ahead and see how AI is now playing into the role of today and the future. Whether you're buying or selling, your home is often one of the biggest financial assets you have and one of the largest decisions you'll make. Some say, why hire an agent? All they do is put it on a website and collect a commission. I'll do it myself and save a tons. Well, according to the National Association of Realtors, cost savings are the #1 motivator for those who want to sell by owner. 30% of all FSBO sellers say their reason was to avoid paying commission entirely. But here's the twist. While they might save on the listing agent's fee, they often end up accepting a lower net sale, longer time on market, more stress, and often still end up paying out even a part of the buyer's agency commission. Because of today's tech sites like Zillow and Redfin, and online valuation tools, and even AI property analysis tools, many home buyers and sellers believe they can handle it all themselves. It has made browsing so much easier and a bit exciting. But it's also important to note why these tools can't be trusted or wholeheartedly relied on. In another video of my channel, I go into more detail about how the algorithms work and what you should expect when reviewing them. So let's talk numbers. According to NAR's 2024 profile, just 6% of home sales were for sale by owner in 2024. That's only a tiny slice. Also, for sale by owner homes sold for a median of $380,000 in 2023 compared to agent-assisted homes at a median price of $435,000. That's a gap of about $55,000 on average. Other analysis shows that FSBO homes tend to sell for about 5 to 15% less than comparable agent-assisted homes. In plain English, sure, you might save, say, 2 to 6% of commission, but if you sell the house for 5 to 10% less, you're most likely going to be net worse off here. Remember that all commissions are negotiable and that there is no set standard for commissions. Each situation and agency may vary. And just because you list it yourself doesn't mean buyers will even know your property is out there on the market, or that you can skillfully negotiate the nuances of the offer, manage the contingencies properly, or leverage the right timing. So back to the courtroom. If you showed up without an attorney, you'd still have to know all of the rules, file all the motions, negotiate the plea or the judgment, and anticipate the opposition's tactics. In real estate, it's the same. Here's a few real-life examples of something that I've witnessed firsthand from both sides of the fence, buying and selling. First example here was a seller who listed for sale by owner. A seller was trying to sell their home for FSBO and marketed the home through social media and Craigslist, and they had a sign or two in front of their home, and they even put it up on Zillow themselves. Well, they saw that a neighboring home down the street sold for $300,000, and they figured they should get about the same for their house, and took a few photos of their house on their awesome iPhone camera, which has some pretty great photos, they felt like. But after about 3 months of only getting some real lowball offers from Facebook Marketplace and a dozen or so of absolute pure time wasters that came through just to scope the property out with no real interest, and not to mention a handful of real estate agents that were just trying to list it for them, they finally ended up accepting an offer of around $15,000 below their asking price. When the appraisal came, they were shocked to see that the valuation was actually only at $250,000. Well, the buyer couldn't get approved for an amount more than that appraised value, and the seller had to reluctantly decided to lower that sales price to match that. So now they were from $300,000 down to $250,000. Finally, about a week before closing, which was nearly 30 days later in the process, the lender and the title agency required to see a copy of the COO to meet the final condition to approve the loan and schedule their closing. Well, neither party, buyer or seller, had even known this was a requirement. The seller called the city, scheduled the inspection. It took another 2 weeks until the inspector came out to look at the property there. Well, when that inspection finally happened, they also learned that not only were there a handful of minor items that needed to be repaired, but several squares of concrete in the driveway needed to be completely replaced. And the city required that the new sidewalk also be installed where there previously wasn't one as part of their new code ordinance. The seller couldn't afford to pay for these repairs up front, and neither could the buyer. Needless to say, this home didn't sell. And now the seller had been sitting on this vacant home paying all the utilities and upkeep for about 5 months. And it was getting close to the holidays. And he'd need to start over again in a market that is, here in Michigan, often much slower. All of these issues could have been foreseen and solved with the right person and the right strategies helping them out from the beginning. Another scenario was a buyer who purchased without representation. I once spoke to a client that was looking to sell a home that they had just bought only 12 months ago. I asked them about it and why they were looking at moving so shortly after buying it. And they told me that they didn't want to buy the house with an agent and they just dealt with it directly through the seller. They didn't want to be responsible for possibly paying a commission for the buyer's agent. But because the listing agent's duty was to the seller, the buyer missed all of the subtle but important red flags. There were HOA restrictions that weren't explained clearly to the buyer, which caused immediate problems when the buyer tried cutting down a couple of the trees, as well as issues with the sewer backing up that had apparently been a previous issue that wasn't found out about because they didn't do an inspection. And then, of course, the tax increases that came with the home after the transfer made the home completely unaffordable to them, and they weren't prepared for any of this. Unfortunately, this put them in quite a financial bind, and they needed to get out before it got worse. However, with the short time that they've owned the property, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for equity growth, even though it had been a relatively stable market. It made it very difficult to sell for what they owed, let alone to try to make a profit from it. So they were going to be competing on the market with some other new construction homes that were being built only a few blocks away for around the same price that they needed to sell for. The whole situation could have been avoided, again, with the right people in their corner looking out for them and making sure their interests were kept first and foremost. It would have saved them several $1,000s and helped them find the right home instead right out of the gate. These aren't isolated stories. The paperwork, the deadlines, disclosures, contract negotiations, inspections, repair credits, it's a full court press. Hiring someone who lives this game day in and day out gives you a defense and offense and will help build a strategy of how to protect your interests, your money, your time, and your mind. Now let's fast forward to the future, which is mostly here already. AI is getting smarter and smarter. Tools can analyze thousands of comps, predict market trends, even recommend offer strategies and repair budgets. It's exciting. But here's the kicker. AI doesn't replace the human agent. It enhances one. It doesn't feel the tension that a client may feel during the process. It doesn't know the neighborhood politics or why one street is significantly more desirable than another. It doesn't provide emotional support when a deal goes sideways or give you new ways to think of solutions that make sense to you and your needs. So think of AI as your data-driven assistant and the real estate agent as your true advocate and advisor who wrote the playbook and chooses the plays. Together, you're unbeatable. But trying to go agentless or do it alone and rely purely on AI or online tools, that's like knowing that a half-court shot can be made if you throw the ball up, but without the right skills and practice, it may be pure luck that it actually goes in the basket. So, do you need a real estate agent to buy or sell a home? Technically, no. But should you? Absolutely. Hiring a professional who knows the pitfalls, negotiates hard, uses updated and growing tools, including AI, and advocates for your interests and not the opposite side, can help actually make you tens of thousands of dollars of difference and save you months of worry. Thanks for watching this video. I hope that you found it helpful. And if you did, please give it a like and a subscribe and follow our channel for all sorts of videos related to real estate. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Mike West. I'm a local real estate agent here in Southeast Michigan. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM or even a call at my personal cell, 313-288-0553. Hope to see you in the next one.